Welcome to the Coach Barnabas podcast. It's time to take a few minutes and leave behind the stuff that drains us and recharge our batteries with some encouragement and insight, finding the extraordinary in the ordinary.
Hi, and welcome back to episode 12 of Coach Barnabas. And today's topic, honestly, I didn't wake up this morning expecting or anticipating to speak on this particular topic, but as the morning has gone on, and as I record this, it is the morning of Wednesday, March 20th. But as the morning has gone on, I just felt like it was appropriate to speak on this, as today is the 15th anniversary of when my mom passed away. So I thought this would be both kind of a fitting tribute, but also something that might be, believe it or not, kind of encouraging, or at least I want to have an encouraging message through this, as is the nature of this particular podcast. Death is inevitable. And I knew, many years ago, I recognized that, while my parents were still around, I knew that my two worst days were still ahead of me. And you don't dwell on that, but, you recognize it and you kind of prepare yourself in some sort of way. You're never truly, fully prepared, but, you start to accept, if you're at all pragmatic, if you're at all practical, you accept the fact that it's inevitable, right? And my mom had, she'd been sick and she had a disease, that was weakening her physically, and she had a lot of physical limitations. In the last several years of her life, frankly, she was bedridden. Now, physically, she was very weak and frail. Mentally and spiritually, she was, she never lost a step. I'm thankful for that. And I'm thankful that for a lot of things, and that's kind of what I want to talk about today. So going back a ways, just to let you know, the way I grew up, I was not raised in a home that was super lovey-dovey. We didn't hug and kiss and say, I love you. That just was not who we were. Now, my mom probably left to her own devices. She was very much like that, but my dad was more, it was a different generation. He's a former Marine, Irish Italian. He was a cop, in a metropolitan city. He was a tough guy. He was a man's man. So he was not one who was free with his emotions. Maybe except for anger. When he got angry with me, he was pretty transparent, let's say. But when it came to the mushy-gushy type emotions, that was not really a thing in our home. And you don't know any better when you're a kid. You just think, well, okay. Whatever. You grow up and you start thinking that way. And then, as I've mentioned in previous episodes, I was in my senior year of high school, about 17, 18 years old, when I made a decision to become a Christian. And before that, my parents went on a bit of a spiritual journey of their own, and they're the ones who actually preceded me in making that decision some, months before I did. And so they were a big catalyst in getting me to the point I ended up in making that decision. They were an example. But honestly, to go into their story a little bit, maybe I'll go into more detail in the future. My mom really was the one who started the quest, let's just call it that, a spiritual journey. She was just looking for something more. And so she and a friend who, we went to the same Catholic church in the town I grew up in. And so she and a friend of hers from the same church began seeking out opportunities to find, special speakers who might be in the area who were, teaching and preaching on the Bible and the life of Jesus. And so my mom was going to these things. And my dad and I were kind of oblivious to it. And after a period of time, and again, I'll go into more detail another time, but after some time of my mom taking this journey and really pursuing God in a deeper way, it was my dad who was the one who first became a Christian, asked Jesus into his heart, okay, and turned his life around. And my mom was a little bit jealous by that, because when he told her, she's like, but that's what I want to do. And it was very shortly after that she followed his lead. And then it was several months after that when I did the same on my own. So my parents, kind of started a new spiritual heritage in our family, but still we were not lovey-dovey close or anything like that. This is something that would develop years later. As my parents got older and my dad was winding down his career as in the police department in San Francisco, he felt it was right for them. And I've been talking about leaps of faith in recent episodes, but he sensed that the Lord was calling them to basically sell everything, which they'd always threatened to do to me when I was a child. Is one day you're gonna come home, and there's gonna be nothing but empty home and maybe some leftover cardboard boxes because we're moving away. That was always kind of a funny threat. Well, as things turned out, that's what ended up happening. Not quite that dramatically, but he sensed that it was time for them to sell everything, basically, and they moved to Costa Rica to go into missions work in Costa Rica. And this is at retirement age, okay? And my mom prayed about it, and because he said, look, this is just me, but you pray about it, and if we're in agreement, then we'll pursue this. And she prayed about it, and they prayed together, they prayed separately, and she felt the same leading, the same calling. So eventually that's what happened. But they gave kind of a year's notice. They said, we're going to be making this move, but they'd set a date that was basically a year out for them to sell the home and do everything they needed to do, buy property down there. They had to fly down there multiple times, look at property and do different things. So it was a long process. But during this process, there was a bit of a pivot point in our relationship. Now, by this time, I can't honestly tell you how old I was because I don't remember, but we'll say mid-20s probably. So I'm a fully grown adult living on my own, doing the whole thing. And by this time, I was kind of tired of going to church with my parents, not because I didn't love them or anything else, but, they were just the type of people who were loved and adored everywhere they went. And I was always Ed and Sarah's son. And I kind of wanted to carve out my own identity. I wanted to be accepted based on who I am, on my own, without being Ed and Sarah's son, without riding their coattails. And I needed that. So I went off to a different church, and it was a great church, loved it there, and was establishing my own identity and getting involved in ministry there and working with youth, doing music and doing a number of different things. And I was very happy there, and I'd grown in my confidence. I'd grown in my own personal walk and journey with God. And then it got to the point to where it was within that last year, and my parents felt, and my dad was on the board of the church. They were, of course, he was on the board. But they decided it was time to kind of detach from their old church and go somewhere where they could just kind of be fed. They could sit in the back and just be fed in their year of preparation before they moved to Costa Rica. And so during this period, my parents started coming to my church. And I thought, great, finally they're going to be Corey's parents, and the tables had flipped. Well, you know what? People end up loving them. And suddenly, in a way, I became Ed and Sarah's son again. But I honestly didn't mind this time because, again, a shift started happening in my own heart because I knew that the time was coming when they were going to be moving to another country. And this was in a time when even on your cell phone, you couldn't just call another place, out another country or long distance or something for basically nothing. Long distance was ridiculous. Even if you called another state or even if you called another area code, there was long distance charges back in the landline days. So knowing this going in, it was like, this may be among the last months that I have face-to-face in an everyday relationship with my parents. And that shift began to churn in each of our lives. We didn't talk about it necessarily, but we began to express our feelings to each other a bit more openly with I love yous and hugs and kisses and just expressing our affection for each other and our appreciation for each other. And I'm so grateful for that because they ended up moving, and they were down there for about 8 years, I think. Before my mom's illness really required them to move back to the United States. My dad's insurance wasn't going to be enough for them being in a foreign country. They needed to come back to the States. But, we didn't know this all going in. But again, I look back at that. I'm so thankful that we had those months to kind of change our focus and express ourselves to each other, and leave nothing left unsaid, essentially. So many people don't learn that, don't realize that until it's too late. And I've known too many people who have regrets over things they didn't say, things they didn't share with their parents or loved ones before they were gone, and it was impossible then to share those thoughts and feelings. So I'm grateful for that, and our relationship with each other just changed completely, and our everything about us changed in that. And it was a wonderful experience in that. And when they moved back to the United States, they moved back to the Sacramento area. By this time, I'm living in San Jose, so we're a good couple hours apart. And I'd go visit them. I was just gonna go home, but that wasn't necessarily home. That's just where my parents lived. But I would go visit them for holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, occasional weekend here, there, and just spend some time with them. But we'd buy each other cards on, presents on, and we would tell each other, in detail and length. We would put it in writing how much we loved each other. And I grew up always wanted to hear these simple words from my dad. I'm proud of you. Okay. If you're a guy, maybe you can relate, even if you're a female, maybe that's something, you can relate to, but I think it's particularly intense among males, to have their father's seal of approval, to make them know that they're proud of us. And it certainly was the case for me. My dad was just my hero. And to make him proud was something that was meant more to me than the accolades or compliments from anybody else. I needed my dad to approve of me in anything I'd done. But that proved to be rather elusive. I had people tell me, your dad's really proud of you. And it's like, well, I want to hear it from him, but thanks. But it would kind of rang hollow because I needed to hear it from him. But as we got older, and as, after we'd gone through this period where our focus shift, he began to express himself, and I have, to this day, I saved birthday and Christmas cards where he would say, I love you, I'm proud of you, and things like that. And it's like, those were words that just broke me. And I longed for that so much. And so I'm grateful for all of that. And as the time came when my mom, it was obvious that she was not going to last much longer. It was February of 2009 when she was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. And they said it was just really maybe months that she would live. And of course I was devastated, and she spent some time in the hospital, ran a myriad of tests on her, and I'd go visit her every day. And the particular day when she was diagnosed with the stage 4 cancer, and they said, there's really nothing we can do. There's no surgery. There's no treatment we can do that her body could tolerate that would it would ultimately do more harm than good. It might buy her a tiny bit of time, but her body was so weak that there's no way. So just like, when we release her, just take her home and make her as comfortable as you can. But the day she was diagnosed, I went to visit her in the hospital. It was just her and me in the room, or she and I, let's be grammatically correct, in the room together. And I was doing the 1,000-mile stare. The TV was on, and I think I may have been looking at it, but really looking through it. And there's just silence, as we're both just processing the information we'd gotten. And at that point, my mom told me later that she was at peace with it, and she expected, this was in February of 2009, when we got through the previous holiday season, she had a feeling this was going to be her last holiday season. And so somehow she was prepared for this. And I just attribute that's just God. But I didn't have that same sense. So I'm absorbing all this as best I can. Again, just kind of staring off in the distance, holding my mom's hand. And at one point, she speaks out and she says, I just wonder who's going to pray for you when I'm gone. And that was her biggest concern, because my mom was my biggest advocate in every way, shape, and form. but none more significant, more impactful than knowing she was praying for me and every day, and that they prayed together for me. And that was something that when she said that, it was like, that was my mom's biggest concern, was praying for me, praying for my brother. And without her, who was going to be there for us? Because neither one of us were married or anything like that. So, and it would be some years after that before I did get married. It was 7 years after that by the time I got married, and long before I'd met Sarah. That's another story, but my mom's name was Sarah. I think I mentioned that in a previous episode, that my mom's first name was Sarah, middle name was Jane, and my wife's first name is Sarah Jane, Sarah-Jane. So, again, just kind of a neat little thing how God ties things together. But again, that was my mom's biggest concern. And it hit me in just a profound way, because it's like, I'm going to lose my greatest earthly advocate who lifted my name up in prayer, lifted my life up in prayer. And it wasn't based on circumstances of my life. Things could be going great, and she would just speak my name to the Lord. And when things were rough, I knew she would be there on her knees praying for me. So it was something that woke me up in a lot of ways. And ultimately, I have a wife now who is my earthly advocate. She prays for me every single day and prays with me every single day. So my mom's prayers were answered, but all that, I just kind of want to go back and, as a tribute to my mom, who is just, again, just one of my two biggest spiritual heroes and just life heroes, just the kindest woman ever. Nobody ever had a negative thing to say about her before or since. It would be impossible to come up with something negative to say about her. So I'm grateful to be of her lineage. I'm thankful. We don't get to choose our parents, and I am so blessed to have had her as my mom. And so when I reminisce about her, sure, I miss her. I miss hearing her voice. I'm sad that she never got to meet my wife. My wife never got to meet her, and my stepsons and my in-laws and everybody else. She never got to meet them. So yeah, there's a little, wow, I wish that could have happened, but I don't look back on it in sadness. I don't look back on her life in sadness. If I had it my way, if it were possible, I wouldn't want to bring her back, because she is living her reward. She is currently experiencing everything she lived her life to experience, and that's to be in the presence of God and worshiping Him. And the Bible says in 1 Thessalonians that, paraphrasing, that when we lose somebody as Christians, we don't mourn, we don't grieve as those who have no hope, as those who have no, eternal experience or eternal time with God in His presence in heaven. For a lot of people, death is the end of something, and in the Bible tells us that when we are in Him, that death is just the beginning. It's the beginning of eternity in His presence. And so when she left, I missed her. Her daily presence was gone from my life. Hearing her voice, I miss it. But I rejoice in the fact that she's exactly where she wanted to be, and in the arms, in the presence of God, and welcomed by Jesus. And I wouldn't deprive her of that for a single second, just to fulfill my desire to see her one more time, give her a hug, give her a kiss, hear her voice, all those things, introduce her to my family. So it's just different. It hits different. So my encouragement to you is several things. It is one, leave nothing left unsaid. Don't take any conversation for granted. Don't take any day for granted. Take today and reach out to your loved ones. Maybe they're family members, maybe they're friends, coworkers, whomever, and just appreciate them. Appreciate what they've invested in your life, what they've contributed to your life. show your appreciation. Pick up the phone and call them. Send them a message. Do something, and just pour out your heart a little bit. Make yourself a little vulnerable and let them know what they mean to you. And again, I just want to encourage you to, if you're processing loss, a recent loss, or maybe a loss from years ago, is to look back on it fondly and to recognize their contribution in life. And even if they weren't the best parents in the world, maybe their influence in your life, even if it was more negative than positive, helped you identify things that are truly most important to you in relationships. Maybe because I remember growing up saying, I'm not going to do things that way when I'm a parent, when I'm in a position of, parental authority. I want to do things differently than that. I took notes, and, my parents were doing the best they could. And sometimes I frustrated them to the point to where their humanity showed a little bit more than other times. So, sometimes even in their mistakes, you can learn things. And so I learned things from their mistakes, and they would acknowledge that. We had conversations about mistakes they made along the way. They humbled themselves and admitted those things to me and apologized to me about things, and I apologized to them. We reconciled in everything that we possibly could, and I'm so grateful for that. So just leave nothing left unsaid, and let go of things. Forgive and ask forgiveness. And even if you ask forgiveness expecting to get humiliated, embarrassed, have your nose rubbed in it, wipe the slate clean. Let it go and forgive. Okay. And as the old saying goes, being resentful and bitter and unforgiving is like drinking poison, expecting the other person to die, right? When we hold on to things and we're bitter. But when we forgive, we release all of that. And even if they remain upset and bitter and all those things, it's like, at least you're conscious, at least you are free of that. You've let go of it. And that toxicity that runs in your life will be gone once and for all. So I just encourage you to do those things and to embrace life, embrace relationships, and reach out and reconnect with people maybe you've disconnected with. Maybe there was some sort of feud. Maybe you've even forgotten. Why haven't we spoken in all these years? I can't even remember. It's so trivial now in light of our growth, maturity, the way life has gone. Who knows? Or maybe it just, if one of us would just suck it up and humble ourselves and cross over and reach out to them, we can resolve this once and for all and put those things behind us. So I want to encourage you to do these things. And I hope, in tribute to my mom, I hope that in some way, the example I've shared of her life and her love and what happened in our personal relationships will be an inspiration to you to follow suit and to make sure that nothing is left unsaid. So when they are gone, you'll have no regrets, and you'll be thankful for the time you had to completely restore the relationship that maybe you didn't grow up with. But you can at least say, we ended right. It's not how you start, it's how you end. And finish the race strong, finish it well. So that's it for today. Remember, just be encouraged, be an encouragement, be a reconciler. How about that? But do that today. We'll catch you next time. Look forward to talking to you then. Take care.
Thank you for joining the Coach Barnabas podcast. We'd greatly appreciate your support by liking and subscribing to the podcast and setting up notifications so we can let you know when new episodes are available. We'd love to hear from you, so please leave a comment. Make a difference today.